Last year, I worked night shifts at a rest stop at around Interstate 90, just outside of Albany. My job was pretty straightforward: keep the place clean, restock supplies, and report any issues. The rest stop had a gas station, a vending area, and a small lounge with bathrooms. It was usually quiet after midnight, with just the occasional trucker or road tripper passing through. I'd just finished mopping the bathroom floors and was settling into the back office to kill some time. We had a small monitor connected to the outdoor security cameras, which cover the parking lot and entrance. Most of the time, all you'd see were empty spots. Around 2 a.m., a car pulled in. It parked near the vending area, far from the gas pumps. I watched the driver step out, a guy wearing a hoodie and jeans. He didn't go for the vending machines, though. Instead, he just kind of stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the building. I thought he was stretching his legs or deciding whether to come in, so I went back to scrolling my phone. A few minutes later, I took a look at the monitor again. The guy was still standing there, only now he was looking directly at the camera. That made me pause. It wasn't uncommon for people to linger outside, especially on long drives, but something about the way he was standing, motionless, head tilted slightly up, felt off. I decided to keep an eye on him, just in case. After another minute, he started walking toward the building. I waited for him to step inside, but he didn't. Instead, he stopped just outside the glass doors. The rest stop had a policy about staying locked in the back office at night unless absolutely necessary, so I didn't go out to greet him. If he needed something, he'd come in. But he didn't. After like 5 minutes, he finally moved, walking around the side of the building, out of the camera's view. Now, this is where I started feeling uneasy. The side of the building led to the maintenance doors and a small utility shed. No reason for a customer to be back there. I grabbed the radio to call the highway patrol, but hesitated. What was I going to say? A guy walked around the building? That's not exactly a crime. Still, I had a bad feeling, so I decided to check the side camera. Switching the feed, I saw him. He was standing by the maintenance door, trying the handle. That was enough for me. I grabbed my phone and dialed the non-emergency number for the state troopers. As I was explaining the situation, I glanced back at the monitor. He wasn't there anymore. "Sir, are you still there?" the dispatcher asked. "Yeah, he was just at the maintenance door, but now he's gone." She told me to stay put and lock the office door while they sent someone over. I hung up and locked the door. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then, I saw something move. The guy was back, standing near the gas pumps now. But he wasn't alone. Another guy joined him. They were talking, gesturing toward the building. I couldn't hear them, but it didn't matter. My gut told me they weren't there for gas or snacks. The two men started walking toward the building together. They stopped at the glass doors, the first guy reaching into his pocket. I didn't wait to see what he pulled out. I grabbed the radio and told the troopers to hurry up. While I was on the call, the lights outside the building flickered, then went out completely. The monitors switched to night vision, and then I can't see them anymore. I was starting to panic. I turned off the lights in the office, hoping they wouldn't notice me if they got inside. Minutes felt like hours. Then I heard tapping on the office door. I didn't move. The tapping turned into a soft knock. "Hello?" A voice called out. It was calm, almost friendly. "We just need some help with our car." Nope. I stayed completely still, not even daring to breathe. After a few moments, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I looked at the monitors, but they were nowhere to be seen. Finally, red and blue lights flashed in the parking lot. The state troopers arrived. I unlocked the office door and ran out to meet them, explaining everything as fast as I could. They searched the area but didn't find anyone. The only sign they'd been there was a set of footprints, leading away from the building, disappearing into the woods. The troopers told me to stay vigilant and call again if anything else happened. When my shift ended, I handed in my notice. No job is worth spending another night at that rest stop. Last summer, I worked night shifts as a dispatcher at the Valley Transit Hub in Spokane. The place was a mix of bus maintenance garages and long-haul truck loading docks. My job was mostly coordinating schedules and making sure trucks and buses were logged when they came and went. It was the kind of gig that kept you just awake enough to not fall asleep, but bored enough to count the hours. The hub was sprawling, huge garages, fenced yards, and a small office building where I worked alone most nights. The only other people on site were the occasional truckers rolling through, or the cleaning crew who showed up around 5 a.m. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I first noticed something off. I was sitting at my desk when I caught movement on one of the external cameras. The monitor showed a grainy image of the south gate, which was supposed to stay locked at night. Someone was walking along the fence line. I leaned closer. It wasn't a trucker. They weren't wearing the reflective vest required to be on site. Just a person in dark clothes, walking slowly, right along the edge of the property. I grabbed the radio and called the security company we contracted, but they didn't answer. Typical. I kept watching the monitor, expecting them to disappear into the night. But instead, they stopped by the south gate and just stood there, staring at it. They didn't try to climb it or open it, just stood, hands in their pockets, like they were waiting for something. That's when the motion light near the gate flickered on. I jumped a little, and for a split second, I swear the figure looked up at the camera. Then the light went off, and when it came back on a few seconds later, they were gone. I don't know why, but that unsettled me more than if they'd tried to get in. Trying to shake it off, I did a quick walk through the building to make sure all the doors were locked. Everything was secure, and there was no sign of anyone inside. Around 3:35, I heard a noise coming from the direction of the garage. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, like someone knocking softly on a metal surface. I checked the cameras again. The garage doors were closed, and there was no one outside, but the sound kept going. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight and walked out to the garage. I was expecting to find an animal or maybe a loose piece of equipment rattling in the wind. What I found instead made my stomach drop. The side door to the garage, the one with the keypad lock, was wide open. I stood there for a second, shining my flashlight into the dark interior. I called out, "Hello?" I stepped inside. The place smelled like oil and rubber, the usual. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. A toolbox had been dragged into the middle of the floor, with its drawers open and tools scattered everywhere. I backed out slowly. As soon as I was clear of the door, I slammed it shut and bolted it from the outside. Back in the office, I called the police. I didn't care if they'll think that I was overreacting. Someone was definitely on the property. It took them about 20 minutes to arrive. When they searched the site, they didn't find anyone, but they did find something that made my blood run cold. The south gate's lock had been cut clean through, and the chain was lying in the grass. The cops told me to call if I saw anything else and left. Great help, right? The rest of the shift. Thankfully, nothing happened. When the cleaning crew arrived at 5 a.m., I left. The next day, the manager reviewed the security footage. He found something I hadn't seen on the monitors. At 3:10 a.m., just before I heard the noise, the person from the south gate appeared on the garage camera. They walked right up to the side door, holding what looked like a crowbar, and disappeared inside. The footage cut out a few minutes later, just static until the cops showed up. I never worked another night shift at the hub. To this day, I have no idea who that person was or what they wanted. I used to work night shift as a guard for an office building. It's a pretty easy job most nights. I just do a few rounds through the floors, keep an eye on the cameras, and keep my earbuds in with music or scrolling through TikTok to pass the time. I've done this shift for over a month now, and there's never been much to talk about. Until this day. I was walking through the third floor, then my radio cut out. It does that occasionally, usually some tech issue with the walkie that I report in the morning. So I switched it off and just let the front desk know about it later and kept going with my rounds. When I got down to the lobby to check the main entrance, I saw something strange on the monitor for the underground garage. There was a car parked near the far end, a silver sedan that I hadn't noticed before. It's normal for cars to be left overnight, but this one was weird because I'd been in that part of the garage not even an hour before, and it wasn't there. Plus, it was parked awkwardly, slanted across two spots. I thought someone must have pulled in after hours, maybe an employee. As I watched the monitor, I saw that one of the brake lights was on, dim but definitely on, like it had been left halfway pressed. I watched it for a minute, thinking maybe someone was still sitting in the car. But the car stayed empty. After about a minute, the brake light flickered off, so I shrugged it off and went on with my rounds. Around 1 a.m., I had just come up from another round when I saw something move on the camera for the parking garage again. I thought maybe someone was down there, moving between cars, but it was hard to tell. I stared at the screen, squinting at the dark corners, trying to make sense of it. After a moment, it became clear that it was the same car, the silver sedan. Only now it was parked further away, like someone had backed it up by a few feet. I started to feel a bit uneasy. Cars don't just move by themselves, and I knew I was the only one on duty. To be safe, I decided to go down to the garage. When I got there, the silver sedan was right where I'd last seen it on the monitor, parked about 10 feet further back from the original spot. It was weirdly quiet, like that tense, empty silence you get in an old basement. I walked around the car, checked the windows, peered into the back seat. Nothing. I felt a little silly, but I wanted to check if the car doors were locked, just in case someone was hiding inside. I tugged the driver's door handle, locked. Same with the passenger door. Everything was locked tight. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, I heard something beep. I turned around looking for the source and realized it was coming from the far corner of the garage. I walked over trying to follow the sound. It was a sharp, annoying beep that cars make when you press the lock button on the key fob. It beeped twice, then paused, then beeped twice again, like someone was hitting the button to lock and unlock their car, but there was no one there. It was the weirdest thing. I walked back to the sedan, wondering if maybe the fob was glitching or if there was some kind of electrical issue. The beeping stopped as soon as I got within a few feet of the car. I took a step back and it started again. I was starting to think maybe I was dealing with a faulty alarm system, but there was no alarm going off, just the beeping. I decided I'd had enough of the garage, so I headed back up to the security office and kept an eye on the monitor, trying to get back to my usual rhythm. But every few minutes, my eyes would drift back to the garage feed, almost like I was expecting something to change. And then, just as I was starting to feel stupid for getting so worked up, the camera feed flickered. Just once, a quick flash, and when the image came back, the silver sedan was gone, like completely gone. I was just staring at the empty spot, like waiting for it to reappear, but it didn't. At this point, I was freaked out. I radioed the front desk, asking if they'd seen anyone enter or leave the garage, but no one had logged in or out since midnight. I double-checked the monitors, looking through every single camera angle, but the sedan was nowhere in sight. I started to think that maybe I was just tired and seeing things, that maybe I'd imagined it all, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I even went down to the garage one last time to find the car sitting in some corner, but the place was empty. I finished up the night shift without any more incidents, but when I came back for my shift the next evening, I couldn't stop thinking about the car. I pulled up the camera feed from the previous night just to see if I could spot anything that would make sense of it. I watched myself walk through the garage, circling the sedan, checking the doors, listening to that beeping sound. It was all there, exactly as I remembered it. But just as I got to the part where I went back upstairs, the screen glitched again. This time, it stayed black for a few seconds longer. When the feed came back on, the sedan was gone. Now, I know I wasn't imagining things. I'd seen the car, heard the beeping, felt the weirdness of it all. But somehow, by the end of the night, there was no trace of it. No record of it leaving. No evidence it had ever been there. I've thought about asking around to see if anyone else has had weird stuff happen on the night shift, but honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. A few weeks ago, I covered the overnight shift at the rest stop off Interstate 70 near Topeka. My friend usually handles it, but he called out sick and I needed the extra cash. It's a pretty standard gig. Quiet, boring, and a little creepy, but nothing I couldn't handle. The rest stop isn't huge. Just a small brick building with bathrooms on either side, a row of vending machines, and a picnic area out back. The highway runs right next to it, so there's always some noise from passing cars. But by 1 a.m., it's practically dead. That night, everything felt normal at first. A couple of truckers came in for coffee from the machine, and one family stopped to let their kids use the bathroom. By 2 a.m., it was just me. Around 2:15, I went out to empty the trash cans near the picnic area. The highway was empty. As I walked past the building, I saw one of the bathroom lights, the women's side, was flickering. It wasn't uncommon for the place to have electrical issues, so I didn't think much of it. I went in to check, expecting to see an empty restroom, maybe a bulb that needed replacing. But as soon as I stepped inside, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The last stall door was shut. Now, that wouldn't have been strange earlier in the evening when people were coming and going, but I hadn't seen a single car pull in for at least an hour. I stood there for a moment, trying to decide if I should knock or just walk out. "Hello?" I called. No response. I took a step closer, and that's when I heard the sound of almost like someone breathing, slow and shallow, like they were trying to stay quiet. I backed out of the restroom quickly. I decided to wait outside for a bit, thinking maybe whoever was in there would leave on their own. But after 10 minutes of standing outside, no one came out. I grabbed my phone and texted my friend. "Ever have someone refuse to leave the bathroom? Women's side, last stall. Kind of freaking me out." He didn't reply right away, so I walked back toward the building, thinking I'd give the door one last check. Before I got there, I heard it. A loud bang, like the sound of the stall door slamming shut. Then, almost immediately after, footsteps, fast, heavy footsteps, echoed from inside the restroom, heading straight for the door. I backed up instinctively, my eyes locked on the entrance, but no one came out. The door didn't even move. At that point, I was done playing nice. I went back inside, grabbing the broom from the supply closet near the vending machines. Armed with the most pathetic weapon imaginable, I opened the women's restroom door again. It was empty. The stall door that had been shut earlier was now wide open, swinging slightly like it had just been pushed. I told myself it was probably the wind or some pressure change from the air system. But the breathing, I couldn't explain the breathing. My friend finally texted back about 10 minutes later. "Yeah, weird stuff happens there sometimes. Just lock it if no one's around. Management doesn't care." That's exactly what I did. I locked the restroom doors for the rest of the night and told anyone who stopped by to use the men's side. When my shift finally ended at 6 a.m., I felt a weird mix of relief and dread. As I got in my car, I glanced back at the building one last time. The women's restroom light was flickering again.